I was happily engaged for about 2 months, then her ex-fiance came back from the dead after almost 5 years. This is my first time ever posting. A friend of mine suggested this as a place to vent into the void. I, Kevin 35M, was engaged to my amazing fiancée Emily, 30F. We met at Starbucks almost 4 years ago now. I saw this mom struggling in the line, so I went up and just paid for her coffee and muffin. I really didn't have any expectations, but we started talking. I noticed she didn't have a ring on her finger, and decided I'd shoot my shot. I didn't want to be awkward, so I just slipped her my business card with me cell on it and told her no pressure, figured if she was married she could just toss the card. I was ecstatic when she called me the next day. Our relationship took off fast, and I have to admit I was in love from the start. She had some trauma she had to deal with. I was the first relationship she had since her fiancé had gone missing nearly 2 years earlier. I was sympathetic, I knew what it was like. I buried my first true love. I had met a girl in college, Jocelyn. We were together for 5 years, engaged, when she was taken from me in a car accident. It took me 2 full years to move on, and I'm still not 100%. Emily wasn't my first date after losing Jocelyn, but she was the first that made me feel that spark. I met her son officially some months later. Paul was the sweetest boy, I bonded with him quickly. They moved in with me, and I knew this is what I wanted out of life. She was still struggling with the loss of her fiancé. He had gone on a guy's trip to Thailand and never came back. He had just disappeared and was presumed dead. I really put in the work to help her overcome that grief. I handled it when she cried after our first kiss, because it was so different. I took things slow while she came to terms with being intimate with someone new. Held her hand on the bad days, and celebrated the good. I knew what it was like, and I didn't want her to have to feel that way alone, like I made myself do. We had been engaged about 2 months when everything started to go south. Her ex-fiancé came back from the dead. He had been gone almost 5 years when his father, who Emily is still very close with and I had come to have a great relationship with, came to our home. He told us that Walt was back, he was alive and well. He told us a story about being trapped in a Cambodian prison. Which, if I'm being honest, still doesn't make any sense. Like you were just lost in the shuffle? They never once let you make a phone call? Maybe in 1979, but not in 2019. I brought this up to Emily once, and she didn't want to hear it. I knew to be supportive at first. There was guilt there. I could understand that. They all gave up on finding him. They even had a memorial service. I was actually pretty relieved when Emily didn't want to meet him right away. I remember when I first met Walt. There was something about him that just seemed off to me. I didn't say anything about that, but did make the effort to let him know I wanted what was best for Emily and Paul. I even got the guy a job working for my brother Kyle. I didn't ever want to deny him his son, but I really needed him to understand that this was going to be hard on the people he left behind. We were plenty cordial with each other, but I will admit I played a bit overly nice, especially since I'm pretty sure he was cussing me under his breath. Once they met in person, it was the beginning of the end. My whole life I've been the bigger person, except for one time in high school. However, watching my fiancé have an emotional affair, right in front of my face for the next 4 months was a bit much even for me. I know he was her son's father, but they got real close real quick. I would bring my feelings on this to her, and she said it was just natural to them. That they had been together a long time before he was taken from her, but there was nothing romantic there anymore. She was with me now, not him. I bought the reassurances for far too long. At our bachelor/bachelorette party, I saw them almost kiss. I knew then that the EA wouldn't end, and would at some point become a physical affair if I didn't do something. I decided I had to take this head on the very next morning. We were 6 days from wedding bells. I asked her to talk to me. I asked, "Are you falling back in love with Walt?" She was taken aback for a moment. I never completely stopped. A part of me will always love him. We were separated through circumstances, not by of our own failings, but I've told you, there's nothing more between us. I pushed forward. I saw last night. I know you both thought I got there after, but I saw you dance, I saw you almost kiss. I just want to know if you want him more than you want me. She began to cry. No, I made a commitment to you, I will not go back on it. Sure, there are still feelings, can you blame me, but I love you as well. I told her, that isn't very reassuring, it sounds more like you are staying with me out of obligation than love. She got defensive. I do love you, I'm marrying you. I calmly asked, when you picture yourself walking down that aisle, who do you picture standing at the end? She was tearing up even heavier. I'm sorry, it's just hard now that he's back. I said, I know what it is like to lose someone, I don't know how it feels to get them back. I'm sure it's hard. Emily interrupted, it's impossible. I just can't stop how I feel. I'm so sorry. I hugged her tight. If you want to be with him, you need to tell me, it gets so much harder after next week. I only want you to be happy, with no regrets. Now, do you want to be with him? She just nodded her head and sobbed harder. I broke down too, it was one of the most painful moments of my life. We talked on about fairness, she wavered in her choice for a moment, but came back to him. I could sense a weight had come off of her. She began to pack. I asked if I could still be in Paul's life, she said that would make her so happy. In a last moment, before she walked out forever, I told her I loved her and to take care of herself. I said, I know you don't want to hear this, but that prison story has never sat right with me, just promise me you will be careful. She just nodded, turned and left. I completely fell apart. I was left with the daunting task of telling my family, who all adored Emily, and getting back as much money as I could from the deposits. My brother was so angry, he wanted to fire him. I asked him not to, that this man would be providing for Paul now. He calmed, and said he would call Lee up and see if Lee could use him. The next day the eldest, Paul, my almost father-in-law, came by. We had always had a good rapport. He came to make things right in a way, but I knew he also wanted to see his son marry Emily. When he offered to cover the return of all my deposits, I knew what he was doing. He was going to give them the chance to get married. I wanted to tell him to shove it, but I didn't. Always the bigger person, always letting it go. She came and got the rest of her stuff that week and let me know they were marrying. All of this happened 9 months ago. I've seen on their social media they act like the happy couple. Everyone comments how happy they are for them. They say it was fate, that some divine force let him survive his imprisonment and come back to her. Then this week, they announced that Emily was pregnant. Very few people have reached out to me, especially from our mutual circle. It's like they forgot I'm a person too. I guess I was just supposed to be okay with everything because I didn't make a scene. I feel betrayed, I'm broken. My first ever girlfriend cheated, my second died, and now I iced my fiancé to true love. This house I live in used to be filled with hope for the future, now it just has me wallowing in self-pity. I was only able to see Paul twice this whole time, both of those in the first month. Then the separating me from their loves began. That's been the hardest part. I miss my little buddy. This was a boy who called me dad, who sat on my lap every single night while I read him a story from his 5-minute Marvel books. He would fall asleep on me every day and I would go lay him in his bed. You don't just turn that off, I miss him so much. I just don't get it, how is this fair? I never cheated, I never raised my voice, I treated her with respect, care, love. And somehow I feel like I'm viewed as the bad guy in this story? How am I the one who deserves to be punished? I just wanted to raise Paul as my own, to love his mother and wake up to her every day, to give them the best life I could. Where is the justice in this? Where? I don't expect anyone to feel sorry for me, we all have our losses. I just needed to get this off my chest. Update. I had no idea that Walt or Emily had ever posted, so reading their perspectives was quite enlightening and enraging. I was not surprised on what I read in Walt's story that started all this, it was the mindless plot hole dribble I heard him spout off years ago. I always knew something was wrong with that guy. Reading Emily's post from a few years ago though, that made my blood boil. He was a liar and sleazeball. He wrecked my whole life at the time because he was selfish. I never got to see Paul again. It took me a long time to get over Emily. And it was for nothing, he didn't even stop being a sleazeball. I got angry. I went into his profile. He was using it to post in subs, like petty revenge and legal advice. He always portrayed himself as the victim somehow. Anyway, he bragged in these posts about how he managed to drag out his divorce with his ex-wife for a full 2 years, costing her loads more in legal fees. He bragged about sabotaging the sale of their home because he didn't need the money, and he posts about how he was purposely drag out their custody hearings and child support agreements, violating them, and challenging them just to make things harder on her. I lost the love for Emily years ago, but knowing that this guy was also hurting their children just out of spite was enough for me to get over that. I messaged Walt on Reddit and instigated a confrontation. I told him who I was and that I knew who he was. I used a lot of personal details from our past and called him by his name, not his dumb handle. He got personal back, called me by my name, and never corrected my calling him Walt. After I ended this, I contacted Emily via email. Her response had an upbeat tone, and she came on strong with interest in what I've been doing the last 9 years. I cut to the chase though, and let her know I wasn't interested in catching up. I just sent page after page of screenshots and downloads of all of Walt's posts and our conversation. I wanted it clear that U/Cambio NEIA 2000 was Walt, and this was evidence that he was purposely causing issues out of spite that were affecting their legal battle. At that point, I let Emily know I didn't want any more correspondence, and I blocked her. I guess it helped, because about 10 days later on a Tuesday afternoon, Walt came storming into the office of my print shop. There was only one other person in the office with me, Carly. A few college kids I employed were in the back running the machines and listening to music. Walt was cussing me up one side and down the other. He then got up in my face, put 2 fingers in my chest, and threatened to kick my ass. Carly said she was going to call the police, and I told her, "Don't, I got this handled." At this point, I let 25 years of turning the other cheek out. My brother and I were raised in a boxing house. Our dad loved boxing. He put us in boxing classes at a young age, and we kept in them all the way until high school. Even then my brother and I would spar a little here and there just to keep up with it. In high school, I was your stereotype popular guy. I was smart, well-liked, and a 3-sport star: football, wrestling, baseball. I had a girlfriend I had since middle school, and we were each other's first everything. It was early in my senior year. I was the starting QB on the team, and we were pretty good. Notably, we had 2 guys on the team, Tyler and Zach, who were really good and were getting recruited by a few Division II schools. They were best friends, and honestly 2 of the biggest jerks I had ever encountered. They played a lot of mean pranks, constantly talked trash to anyone about anything, and would try to get with the girlfriends of the guys on the team they didn't like, just all-around D-bag behavior. They thought they were really tough too. I mean, they were big and strong, but you could tell they were the kind of guys who had never been punched in the face before. I guess going into our senior year, my girlfriend was starting to feel like she was wasting her youth, being in a long-term relationship with me. Which I could have moved past if she would have told me this, or just broke up with me in the first place. She decided though to just go ahead with her exploration without informing me of the change in our relationship status. It was the night after our first win, and of course there was a house party. I typically didn't go to these in season, or very often. I also had to work this night, movie theater. I get a call from a friend of mine that my girlfriend was seen making out with Tyler, and that they just went into one of the bedrooms together. In a knee-jerk reaction, I tell my coworker I got to go and head that way. It was about 15 to 20 minutes to get to the party. The second I walked in I could see eyes go on me. Some people felt that overwhelming awkwardness you feel when you know something crazy is about to happen. Others laughed and made comments. Zach blocked me from going down the hall, and we were getting in each other's faces when Tyler came out in just a pair of compression undershorts. They both stood over me trying to intimidate me, then threatened to beat my ass if I didn't leave. I turned around and headed for the front door. Tyler and Zach began calling me derogatory names and making a show. Other people laughed and made comments. Once out the front door, I pulled my cell and called Kyle. He was there in 10 minutes. When we walked back in together, Tyler and Zach were standing there in the middle of the room together. Tyler was redressed, and my girlfriend was standing with them. When they saw us, she just turned and ran out the other side of the room. I will never forget the shocked face on Tyler and Zach. We didn't say anything, each of us just walked up and shoved them against the wall, then stepped back, giving them the universal come on sign. I could see in their eyes they wanted nothing to do with us. They had always built themselves on being the big badasses. Really, they were just bullies. They picked on smaller guys and easy targets. Now they messed up. Here were two guys that weren't as big and strong, but were fit and confident, saying, "Let's find out." They had no choice. It was either fight or give up that bad boy reputation. I mean, there were a couple dozen people standing around watching. When they charged us, it wasn't a fight, it was a massacre. In addition to the usual bloody noses and black eyes, I had also broken Tyler's jaw. Kyle had cracked Zach's ribs. Each of them missed a few weeks of the season. When the colleges inquired as to why they were injured, it didn't take long for them to find out it was because of a fight. They stopped calling. We always wondered if law enforcement would get involved, they never did. Our father gave us one hell of speech though. I've carried that with me ever since. Those two were jerks, but I felt like I took their future away. They both came from broke homes and were just scared kids. They didn't have what me and Kyle had. They never ended up going to college, and here 25 years later, I know they never left our hometown or really amounted to anything. I have been the bigger person every day since then. Now I was standing here being threatened by the person I despise the most in this entire world. I shoved him back, and when he stepped forward again, he got met with a quick jab and hard right hook. He flopped on the floor like a fish, trying to get up, but too woozy to steady himself. Carly came over, and he started to cry a little. We walked him out to his car and put him in the driver's seat. About 7 minutes later he started it and drove off. I don't feel the least bit bad. In fact, I feel amazing. I have wanted to do that for almost 10 years, and now only kick myself, because I should have done that a long time ago. Update. Emily got into contact with me. She had a new email account. I did not read it, just blocked her again. Then she did the same thing again. This time I did read it. It was a semi-long email. It basically said, "Thank you for your help, I'm sorry for the choices I made, I bet you are, I'd like to meet, catch up, and show a little appreciation for the help with my ex." Obviously it wasn't worded this way, but that's the gist. I showed it to Carly, and she said there is no doubt in her mind that Emily wants to get back together with me, telling me that the tone is flirty. She then asked me what I thought about that. I said, I would rather cut my own feet off. I'm just going to block her again. Carly said to me, I don't think she will get the hint anytime soon, she's not outright saying it, so I think you should meet and make it perfectly clear you're not interested, give you a little more practice at being petty. She said the last part with a laugh. I agreed to give it a shot. I responded to the email and said I'd be willing to do a friendly one-time meetup. She asked if the next day would be fine, and I replied yes. She then sent back to meet her at noon at the Starbucks on Spring Mill Road. The very Starbucks we met at all those years ago. I told her under no circumstances was she to bring Paul, and she swore she would not. She ended up sticking to that, because had she not, I would have walked out. I arrived before she did, grabbed a drink and a table. When she came in, she walked over to me and went for the hug. I rejected it and gave her the handshake. She seemed a little sad, and I began question this choice. She excused herself to get a drink and then came back. I sat there staring at her, waiting for her to say something first. She finally began, "You look really good." I replied, "Thanks, I go hit the bags with the MMA guys sometimes." "Emily, I thought you were into boxing?" Slightly annoyed by the small talk, I am, but the MMA gym is close to the house and they obviously work boxing too, but I doubt this is why you wanted to meet. She began telling me about what she found out about Walt. I stopped her and told her I already knew. I also told her about him attacking me a year ago. Then came what Carly told me to expect. I'm sorry for what happened between us. I made a huge mistake. I let this Hollywood ideal of lost love get in my head. It was a very traumatic time for me as well. I just can't begin to tell you how sorry I am. I was hoping you could find a way to forgive me, or give me a chance to earn that forgiveness. I deadpan said, I got over all of that a long time ago. My distaste for Walt was much stronger. I'm glad your situation worked out, but I did that for your kids. She became a bit more overt. I just have this feeling, like there could still be something there. I have regretted losing you for quite a while now, and I just feel like fate brought you back. I mean, what are the odds you of all people would find those Reddit posts? I just have this feeling that the universe is trying to bring us back together. I was about to reply, but Carly's timing was perfect. She had been listening via speakerphone. As she came in, she smiled at me and said, Hey Kev, you ready to go? She then gave me a kiss that lingered a little longer than normal for public. She looked at Emily and extended her hand. You must be his ex-fiance, Emily. Emily looked a little annoyed. Yeah, Kevin didn't mention he was dating anyone. I guess he likes them young now. She said that like it was a dig at the both of us. Carly laughed and said with a smile, Oh honey, you're sweet. I'm a 39-year-old mother of two, but I'll take the compliment nonetheless. I don't get called young too often. Also, I'm his wife, of the last 7 years. She then posed her stance in a way that really accentuated her amazing figure. Emily looked a little shocked. Kevin, why didn't you tell me you were married? I stood up prepared to leave with my wife. You never asked, plus I wanted you to know no one was waiting around for you. At that point we headed out. I guess I'm realizing now that I never mentioned that in my post either. I met Carly about a year after my engagement ended. We've been married almost 7 years, but I won't fault my wife for rounding up. We have a 5-year-old daughter and her 14-year-old son from her first marriage. His dad is not a D-bag and we get along well. My stepson calls me Kevin, probably always will, but we still have a really good relationship I wouldn't trade for anything. When we got back into the car, Carly looked at me and said, See, it's fun to be petty sometimes. I just nodded and thought to myself, yeah, it really was. I haven't gotten another email from Emily, so I'm thinking she got the hint.